Folks, we're back. This is Steve Sanson and Stephanie Phillips with another episode of Veterans in Politics. Today we have the lovely Honorable Rebecca Saxe, Las Vegas Justice of the Peace, Department number 13. But before we get to Judge Saxe, Ms. Phillips.
I have my announcements and I do have a rant too. Everybody, you know where to get the book that Steve wrote, How to Navigate Nevada's Family Court System. It's on Amazon. It's $14.99. So for all those folks out there that can't afford an attorney and you are going through family court, this is the book for you. Self-help book will give you lots of great information. Also, we have advertising spots if you would like to advertise your business, your nonprofit, or if you're a candidate. If you have a sign that is the size of a yard sign, we have places for those here when we do our shows, and you can advertise with us. So get in touch with us on that. Also, our merch store, VIPImerch.com. Check out all the stuff that we have on there for Veterans in Politics. And we're also planning the Valentine's Ball. That's exciting. That's going to be coming up. We are going to be putting more information about that. It's coming up February 7th, 2026. I know it's next year, but we have to plan ahead on these things. But we'll give you that information. There will be early bird tickets for sale. But
and by the way, the early bird tickets are like a steal. It was against my better judgment.
Yeah. Don't tell them that. And for the rant, I'm going to try and shorten this because there is so much information out there. You know, we have been talking a lot about the Fred Stees case. And Steve did a video a couple days ago. I think it was Monday night, right? Check out his Facebook and you can listen to this live video that he did. And he just went through that case. And Fred was convicted of a 1992 murder. And he went to prison for 20 years, over 20 years. Mm-hmm. And come to find out, I read all of this stuff and it's so deep and convoluted, but basically there was a lot of evidence that was withheld and not shared with the defense. And we're talking about phone records that place him in another state altogether. We're talking about tainted lineup photos. We're talking, alleged witness tampering that the other side was saying. And I read a lot of this from ProPublica, and they did an investigation and a very long article with Vanity Fair, and they went through the entire case. And there was a lot of good information in there. And basically, there was prosecutorial misconduct. And all of this came out in 2012. And ultimately, Fred they said, we will let you out of prison. You can have your freedom. But they made him plead guilty after
Alfred plea.
Yeah, the Alfred plea. After Judge Kadish had said he was an innocent man. Mm-hmm. But they still had him sign that he was guilty. Mm-hmm. He maintained his innocence. It took 4 more years to 2017 for him to actually be fully exonerated, and went in front of the pardon board. And they finally pardoned him, said he was innocent. The state awarded him almost $1.4 million. Mm-hmm. And there was one person on the pardon board that did not vote yes. That one person was Adam Laxalt. And he was running for governor at the time, I believe. Brian Sandoval was the governor then. And he said, Adam didn't want to vote, but the governor said, you need to vote. So Sandoval said, you need to vote. So he said no. After all this evidence came out that said he was an innocent man, wasn't even in the state when the murder happened.
And I had a train ticket saying otherwise.
Yeah, well, he was hopping trains. And when the police catch you and you're on a train, you're not supposed to be on it. They write your name down and file a report. And he was in Wyoming. He was in Utah. The case goes on and on. But anyway, the point is the two prosecutors in this case was William Bill Kephart, who is a former judge. And
he's trying to seek the district attorney position.
Yes. He has been saying that he intends to run for district attorney here in Clark County. And also Justice Herndon, who is a Supreme Court justice. So, in my opinion, if somebody is willing to withhold evidence, knowing that this man is innocent, and he did over 20 years of time, and they had the evidence knowing.
Maximum prison, too.
Yes. To me, anyone who can do that, you are morally corrupt. You are morally bankrupt. You have no integrity. You have no character. And certainly you do not need to have any type of power as a judge or a district attorney. That type of person is dangerous and not good for this state and for our county. There is no way. So if he decides to run for this seat, we are just getting started. So we will do everything we can to keep him, Bill Kephart, from being district attorney. After reading all of this, and also Justice Herndon, I hear, is going to run again for his Supreme Court seat.
And Bill was a friend of mine too.
I know.
I know. It was very disappointing. It was extremely disappointing. And the way I did that video, I broke it down. I said, the only way people are going to really, really get pissed off unless it happens to them. Yeah. So I said, if that was your son, your brother,
your dad,
mother, your sister, what happens if it was one of them? How would you actually take that? You know, it's different when you say, oh, it's that other guy. I don't even know him. So it's all right. But when it comes knocking on your door, then it's a big deal, right?
And there are multiple cases that Bill Kephart has been admonished on.
At least 5 and 12 years.
Withholding evidence and misconduct. So what I would say is we need a law, legislature. Hear this. We need a law that says when a prosecutor is caught withholding evidence, and I'm willfully negligent and withholds evidence, their bar license is revoked permanently. One time. You don't get a second chance. One time. Because right there, you have compromised your character. You've compromised the oath that you took as an attorney. So, but instead, he gets elected to a judicial seat, to the JP, and then also to district court, and now wants to be district attorney? So anyway, sorry this took so long.
And a lot of people say, well, isn't this in the news? Isn't this in the news? And he keeps getting elected. And I say, well, you know, because the people that have the power is not really going after him and saying, you know, he did this and this and that and that and that. But and now we're doing it. We've never done it before on William Kephart or Douglas Herndon. We kind of we didn't know about it, and there was one incident when we endorsed William Kephart. Our bylaws prohibit us to go after our own endorsed candidate, so we had to stay silent on it. This time we're going before he files to make sure that everybody knows, especially our members know, that this is what's going on. To make sure, because you know it's sad. It's sad, folks. I mean,
people need to know,
and the guilty people, the real murderers, are still walking on the street, and that's what really irks me, because this is a cold case now, right? So all that time they could have caught the real person that did this crime against that Circus Olay individual. I forget his name. His name escapes me.
Circus. The Poodle King.
Yeah. The
Poodle King.
He's gone. His whole family is gone without actually, you know, getting justice. You know, and that's the sad part. You know, but anyways, are you done, Miss?
I'm done. Sorry that took so long.
Fine. Well, this is your show. I'm just here.
So Judge Saxe, please tell us about. Thank you for coming on the program.
Oh, thank you for having me.
And thank
I appreciate it.
Listening to.
Oh, you know. Okay.
Could you tell us about yourself?
Well,
you had a model face, by the way.
Oh, that's very sweet of you. I was born in Wisconsin. Went to undergrad at let me back up. I was born in Arizona. Grew up in Wisconsin. I did undergrad at Arizona State, and then came here to Las Vegas for law school in 2006. And so after law school, I worked for a federal judge, Judge Philip Pro, in district court here. And then I had a brief stint at the ACLU doing some prisoner rights type issues.
Like the Innocent Project?
I did a little bit of that in law school, but it was primarily focused on what the treatment was going on in the prison, what the prisoners were being fed, that kind of thing.
Oh, so you could relate to the rent.
Staying far away from the rant.
She can't talk about that.
Staying far away from that. And then after that, I went to the Clark County Public Defender's Office.
Okay.
I was there for 12 years.
Under Phil Cone?
And then Darren Imlay.
Okay.
And then I ran for judge in 2022 and won. And so I've been a judge for Las Vegas Justice Court since 2023. And I was just talking to Stephanie before the show. The time has gone by so fast. She's like, how long have you been? I'm like, maybe 2 years. No, actually almost 2.5. So yeah, time is flying by, but it's been a great experience. So
married, kids?
Married. I met my husband at the public defender's office. Okay. You know, sometimes those rules against not dating coworkers work out. So in this case, it did. But he still is at the public defender's office. He has a different team, and obviously he and his team don't ever appear in front of me. But we have one kid who is 5 years old, which is, yes, he is currently actually, I think, in his soccer practice right now with my husband.
He's not watching you.
He's not watching, though.
Give a shout out?
Though I will. Hi, Sydney. We did a little funny practice because he was asking, you know, I said, I have this interview. I'm not going to be able to make it to your practice tomorrow. I'm like, interview? What's that? Oh, you're fine. It's just, it's not even a real thing. He's all good. Hey, it's all good. So I'm like, he's like, what's an interview? I'm like, all right, we'll practice. You pretend you're the judge. And I'm going to ask you questions. He was so funny. And he's like, so I'm like, so what do you like about being a judge? He's like, I like being on TV. I'm like, oh boy.
Judge Judy.
I'm like, oh boy. But it was funny, yeah. So
have you had any high profile cases?
So when I first started, my first assignment for the first 2 years was initial appearance court. And so basically initial appearance court in Las Vegas Justice Court is anybody who gets arrested sort of Sunday night to Wednesday night will come within 12 or 48 hours, will come before the initial appearance judge, who is actually currently Judge Baucom. And it's an intense calendar because you have 2 calendars in every day, and you're handling anywhere from 60 to 100 cases, making decisions on their bail. And so it involves reading all the police reports for every case, reviewing the risk assessments, reviewing the person's financial affidavit, and then, of course, all the information that's presented in court by the parties, in addition to, considering the factors that are laid out in the NRS as to how to consider. And then you ultimately are making the weighty decision about what to do, whether this person's you're going to make a decision that's going to allow the person to be out of custody to fight their case or remain in custody. And so as part of that, doing that for 2 years, we had media a lot. And so, it was to a point where I'd go to my local Smith's grocery store and they're like, oh, I saw you on TV again. I'm like, oh boy, So I always say, it's never like, oh, I saw you on the news, doing all this charitable, great stuff. It's usually something bad has potentially happened or has happened. And it is what it is, nature of the job. But
do you have the power to grant someone an attorney?
To appoint an attorney? Absolutely.
And what do you look for when you do that?
Well, every person is entitled to an attorney if they qualify.
What makes them qualify?
Well, if they have to complete a financial affidavit. So if they're out of custody and they complete the financial affidavit, it's sort of, you look at different aspects like how much they're making, but most of the time somebody's going to qualify for a public defender. If they're in custody, I'm always appointing a public defender because they are in jail. And so that is, on, every single day on cases, a large part of my job is appointing the public defender. letting the person know this is going to be your attorney. If they're in custody, your attorney is going to come visit you at the jail to discuss your case. You're going to come back to court, or if they're out of custody, make sure to, So a lot of my role, at least I feel in on a daily basis, is to make sure people have a constitutional right to be appointed an attorney if they can't afford an attorney. And so make sure that those constitutional rights are protected and that the person is informed about sort of what's going on, because it's, there's a lot of stuff going on in the court in the morning. And, some people have never been in trouble before, never been in that system, so I want to take the time as much as possible to make sure that they're aware of what's going on. And,
do they have a constitution? Sorry, Ms. Phillips. Do they have a constitutional right for bail?
Yes. Yep. There's a constitutional, unless.
Have you ever denied anybody that?
So there's an exception for first degree murder. So on first degree murder cases, the state, it's all written out in the law that the state has to show presumptive proof evident or presumptive great that it's a first degree murder. And if they do, then the court must detain them without bail. If not, then you get to the bail hearing. There's a couple other circumstances where the court has the authority to grant or to deny someone bail. For example, if they were out of custody, let's say on probation, and are arrested on a new felony offense, then the court has the authority to deny bail. But most instances, a person is going to get bail and they are constitutionally entitled to it.
Or have you done a lot of those?
Oh yeah, I mean I think there was a change in the law through the Nevada Supreme Court that then was amended or adopted, I should say, by the legislature and is now part of the Nevada Revised Statute. And prior to that, there was something called standard bail. So, if you commit X crime, your bail amount is $5,000. If you commit Y crime, your bail is $10,000. And, there was a bunch of litigation about it. And ultimately what the final decision is that it should be an individualized determination. Each case should be looked at based on the nature of the charges, of course, likelihood of conviction, but also person's ties to the community, their employment. There's a whole host of factors that we as judges are legally required to consider, their financial ability to pay bail, that kind of thing. And I think, it makes a lot of sense. I think the average person, whether or not they agree on a particular decision that a judge makes in terms of letting someone out or setting a monetary bail or whatever it is, I think if you ask the average person, if you went before a judge, would you want that judge to be required to consider whether you lived here, how long have you lived here? Do you have a job? Do you have family support? All of those factors. I think
is there a minimum on any of those?
What do you mean minimum?
Like how long you've lived here?
No, there's not. It's just sort of, the idea is ultimately all of these factors are the idea for the judge to the final decision is what is the least restrictive means, and that's in the Nevada Supreme Court decision, Valdez-Jimenez, least restrictive means to ensure someone returns to court and protects the community. And so, I mean, obviously, it's not a science, right? And you have to, and that's why these decisions are very weighty and why initial appearance court as an assignment is, can be very challenging because you are affecting people's lives and you have sometimes limited information. And you just got to make the best decision you can with the information you have and hope that you're making the right one. So, you want to factor all of those in and, make that decision and, hope it's the right one.
What kind of cases do you see the most?
Everything. Everything. I mean, I would say probably, I don't know, maybe not a third, but maybe a quarter of my cases in the morning are traffic tickets.
Oh.
So, and then all the way up to, murder. So, and everything in between. Mm-hmm. So there's not one type of case that I see more often than not. It's just,
Most people don't know, and I've asked this to other judges, most people don't know the judges on their ballot.
Right.
And, when you guys are campaigning, how would you get the community involved? Like what type of an event would you do to bring people down to get to know the judges, where people just, can sit and talk with you guys, get to know who you are? And how do you bridge that gap?
Well, I think there's a couple answers to that. I know that organizations like Veterans in Politics and many others, especially around campaigning, have lots of events to try to do, judicial mixers or candidate mixers to have people have the opportunity to talk to the people who are running. And of course, all of that is great. If, there's a way to put all of the judges together in one place at one time, that'd be great too. It's just strategically, I'm sure it's very difficult, to get everybody to commit to being in one place. But I also think that, there's this sort of perception that when somebody becomes a judge, they are, they should be somewhat separated from the community. And I am of the belief that it should actually be the opposite, and that it's not really the voters' job to go to these things and learn about the candidates. I mean, it is to a certain extent. It's important to be an educated voter, but it's also an obligation and duty of a elected official, including judges, and especially, frankly, judges, to continue to stay engaged in the community, continue to be out there, so that, the idea being that, my belief, and part of the reason I ran, is I want to do what I can to increase the trust in the justice system. Mm-hmm. That people come into my court and feel like I'm going to be fair, like I'm a real person, that I'm not this sort of living in some ivory tower, and I'm, I don't know, and I don't have empathy for the struggles that the person in front of me may be dealing with. And so I try very hard. It's a little bit difficult having a 5-year-old to continue to be going to all the things I want to, but there are certain, events that I try to be a part of, including like community baby shower. Shout out to my friend A.K. Morris and Alex Bernard. They are great, and they do baby showers twice a year for the community and people who don't have the money. Having a baby is expensive, so and it's amazing the kinds of stuff that they bring. And so I've been, the last one I had brought a couple of my colleagues, and it's a way to interact with people, and so that if they have questions, they can ask them. But I think the more you continue to be engaged, and that's just one example of the different ways that I try to stay engaged with the community, and that's our obligation. So I think that's one way that's especially important, because it's hard, especially when you're a voter it's not like the judges are the only decision that a voter has to make. You have 9 months to decide on all kinds of elected positions, and usually the judges positions are at the very bottom of the ballot, and it's a lot of information. So I think we as judges have an obligation to be continuing during our entire term to engage with the community and be there for the voters if they have questions.
Sometimes we ask questions that are maybe a little bit difficult.
Yes.
But that's our program. That's why people tune in. They're going to ask those questions.
But they can always decline to answer.
Why did you run against Susan Bauckham?
So it was absolutely nothing personal. It's the nature of the beast, right? If you want to become a judge, you have to run against somebody. And so that was just the way it went. She is now a colleague of mine because she ran in the recent election and won. I have nothing but respect for her. And as my colleague, I have nothing bad to say about her. So it was absolutely nothing personal.
And a lot of some of the stuff that we ask, there are things that are out there and they're hanging, and we just want, go right to the horse, right?
Yeah,
so to speak.
Of course.
Have you received any ethics complaints, and what was that about?
So during my campaign, I did receive an ethics complaint about sending an email from my work email. that was campaign related. And subsequent to that, they did a full investigation and I was cleared of all wrongdoing. So.
And law enforcement.
Yes.
Tell us about that. Did you get a lot of endorsements from law enforcement, or it was lagging, or how was that?
I did not. And I think partly that was because, first of all, I was running against an incumbent. And traditionally, incumbent judges are going to get a lot of the endorsements. And Judge Baucom had, at the time, gotten the law enforcement endorsement. So that was just the way it was. But I will say that I have a lot of respect for Las Vegas Metro Police Department. I think that they work really hard and the officers really try to do, as a whole, the best that they can.
Well, there's some officers that shouldn't be on the police
I mean,
force, too.
in any profession.
And we do know that.
That applies in any profession, no matter what profession it is. So it is what it is. But
there's some judges that shouldn't be on the bench.
That's true, too.
So, I it's just the way it goes in elections. Sometimes you get the endorsement, sometimes you don't.
True. And sometimes some of those endorsements are not really worth anything anyways. Some of the endorsements, I would say. Not ours.
Of course not.
This is the most important. I mean, they all know that.
Because we have police officers that's part of Veterans in Politics as well.
Of course, yeah,
we have
absolutely.
A huge, what you call it, collage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's hot in here. So from the time you take the bench, from the time you swore in as judge until today, what have you learned?
I think probably one of the things that I have learned the most is, and kind of most surprised about, is how involved judges are or can be behind the scenes and working with the administration in addressing things like access to justice, transparency, fairness. So when I started on the bench in January, we had our judges meeting and we were told, okay, here are a bunch of committees and you can volunteer to be on whatever committees you want, as many or as few. And so at the time, I joined, I was the chair of the pretrial committee because I was the initial arraignment judge. And I also was part of the rules committee, the executive committee, and court reporter committee. And so
they still have those?
They do. And actually the court reporter committee was sort of a sub, committee in terms of the idea that our court reporters up until recently were all independent contractors. Uh-huh. And so they didn't get vacation time, they didn't get sick leave, they didn't get, health insurance. And there have been for years court reporters who, sorry, you guys are throwing me off. For years, there have been court reporters. He's turning the air conditioning down, crawling on the floor, just so that you guys know it's nothing.
You had to crawl underneath the camera to get around the corner. Good job, Mark. Thank you.
For years, there have been court reporters certain court reporters have really wanted to have be full-time county employees and have those other benefits. And so, for various reasons, it's been attempted and stopped and attempted. And so this year, actually, over the last 2 years, the administration, with the help of the judges, but I give a lot of kudos to the administration and working with the court reporters and figuring out how to formulate that. And we got, I think right now, we have 4 full-time employed court reporters who now are going to get retirement benefits and they're going to get sick leave and they're going to get vacation. And so that was one of the things that, was one of the things that was great that came out of that specific committee. But, as part of, for example, the rules committee, oddly enough, Las Vegas Justice Court does not have criminal rules of procedure. So it doesn't mean we don't have rules that we follow, but for what it means is that if you want to know what the rules are, you have to look at multiple sources. You have to look at the Nevada Revised Statutes and look to 8th Judicial District Court. And, when you're talking about access to justice system and when you're talking about fairness, part of that is consistency. If you're a litigant, whether you're an attorney or, a victim or a witness, you would not want to know what the rules are, what to expect, and that no matter what courtroom, to a certain extent, every judge is going to follow those same rules.
Right.
And so as part of that committee, me and myself and my colleagues are working on creating these rules. Now, some of them really are not necessarily creating new rules, right? Some are a little bit tweaked, but we want to make sure that we think that it's important that if you want to know what the rules are, that you only have to go to one place. And if you want, you're charged with a crime and you are say, okay, I have this arraignment, what's going to happen at the arraignment? You can go to the Las Vegas Justice Court rules and find out, well, at the arraignment, you're going to be given your citation. The judge is going to appoint you an attorney if you qualify. You're going to be given X, Y, and Z, and that's what you can expect. Or the rule about, in terms of fairness, if an attorney wants to withdraw from a case and not represent their client anymore, if the defendant or client is there, they can do it, just orally in court. But if they're not, then the attorney needs to make sure that they filed something in writing, that it says under, an affidavit that they have attempted to contact the client. If they have lost contact, that this is their last known address, and this is their last known phone number. And so that is fairness. If you are a client and you've hired somebody and maybe you've lost contact, you don't want that person to just get off of your case and you have never even been notified about that. So those are the kinds of rules that I think lead to access, where you only have to go to one place to know what the rules are, lead to fairness and consistency, because no matter which judge you're in front of, that these are the sort of baseline rules that everyone's going to follow, and fairness, that it's doing the right thing, right, and making sure that people are aware of what's going on, and so those are the things I had hoped for in becoming a judge, in terms of making those sort of larger impacts. Obviously, in my courtroom, my goal is always to be respectful and fair to everyone that appears before me. But when you're talking about even making a broader impact, that's things like having creating finally a Las Vegas Justice Court criminal rules of procedure, or working on having a good pretrial program that addresses supervising people who are out of custody and that kind of thing. So it surprised me, I guess, how closely we work with the administration in making those changes. It's very challenging work, but it's a good kind of challenge, right? It's something new. It's a different sort of wheelhouse, and it's a way of really feeling like you're making an impact on a bigger scale.
So you've been with the public defender for 15 years, right?
12. Yeah.
Is it 12?
12, 13, around there. Yeah.
And how long have you been practicing law right now? Total.
So I got my license in 2009 when I graduated. And so that first year I was a law clerk for the federal judge. And so, I don't know, definition of practicing law. I was a lawyer. In terms of representing clients, that was my job as a public defender, but I was doing other forms of being as a public defender.
No, practicing law.
Since 2000, well, in total, it's 2009. So what is that, 26 years? I can't do math. I'm like a typical lawyer. Terrible.
So, Judge Saxe.
Yes.
Have you ever thought of running for a district court position? But before you answer that, I just want to just for full disclosure, Ms. Phillips and I have been vetting judges, and privately and publicly, and we also been vetting attorneys, maybe more of a privately than publicly, and we're just trying to get ready for the 2026 election.
Yeah.
And as you know, every single district court seat in the state of Nevada is up.
Yeah, it's going to be a big
58 here in Clark County. So I just want to know if you have an interest in. You don't have to get like, oh yeah, I want to do it, or oh no, I don't want to.
You knew he was going to ask you this.
Interest in becoming
District court judge.
a district court judge?
I would never rule anything out. I'm definitely not running in or even thinking about anything anytime soon. Because
This year.
not this year, no, and that's not going to happen. But I think that there's a lot of work that I still want to do in the justice court. I also believe that, justice court really is a lot closer to the people. And that is something that I really like about it. And you have a way you can make an impact in terms of catching people sort of in these, beginning stages potentially, and trying to figure out ways to, through, judicial consequences, through, providing the parties with what resources are out there, that kind of thing, of trying to divert. Once you get to district court, the stakes are much, much higher. So never say never. If you asked me 10 years ago, would you be a judge or run for judge? I'd say probably never say never, but more likely than not, historically, public defenders never were able to win judicial seats. You'd have to basically be a district attorney.
Those days are
over, right?
Over.
I know, but so I never say never, but I'm very happy where I am. I think that our Las Vegas Justice Court bench, we have some really great judges who, all of us, I believe, really want to do the best we can, but also make a difference and make changes on the bench that are going to have long-term impact in helping our community. So I'm very happy where I am at, and we have a lot of work to do still. So
how about Supreme Court?
I guess I'm going to have
She's
to
qualified for that as well.
She said it all in that laugh.
She's got the years for that.
Oh,
It's
man.
15 for Supreme, if my memory serves.
We'll come back to her in a few years.
10 for
Yeah,
district.
right.
15 for Is it 10 for district, 15 for
I
Supreme?
believe so, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Yeah.
So as a public defender, then what I was saying during my rant, or maybe a scenario similar, might have happened to you and on one of your cases. Do you know of any?
I do not finding out the information was withheld.
Later, and your client would have been exonerated, and they were innocent the whole time.
I'm trying to think.
And it doesn't even have
12
to be
years
murder.
I
It could be
represented
anything.
a lot of people. I
Mhm.
can't think of anything offhand. I was fortunate to have a lot to work against, a lot of good district attorneys that I trusted, and that have reputations for being on the up and up and fair. If on the flip side, I had cases where district attorneys said, oh, we're midway, through discovery, and they're like, I just came across this, and I'm going to turn it over to you, and it actually does,
That's not supposed to work.
and that is
Yeah, that's
that
what it's
is
supposed to be.
exactly how it's supposed to work. So
Right.
I definitely had that happen, and sometimes you don't know what is withheld or not. But I will say I haven't had experience. I've been lucky to have worked with a lot of very respectable DAs at the district
And
attorney's
what
office.
should happen to those people that do stuff like that?
No, Stephanie.
Don't have to answer. I just thought I would ask.
Yeah, I mean, I'll leave that up.
Don't
I
get
think
in
that.
trouble.
Well, I say they should be behind bars.
I believe it's a crime, according to Justice Cherry.
It's a crime.
It is a crime to withhold evidence, and
Yes.
when you are not held accountable for such things, yeah.
Especially when you put somebody behind bars for a very
Yeah.
long time.
No, I mean, I think that's where you got the separation of powers, and that is the legislature's job to.
You want to stay in your lane, huh?
I stay in my lane
What's
as
her
much
name?
as I
Ellie
can.
Rahani. Ellie Rahani.
Ellie.
Yeah,
Stay in my
Thank you,
lane.
Ellie.
I love her.
Stay in-
She's great.
She wants to stay in her
We're
lane.
trying to get her to
We're
run
trying to
too.
get her to cross over
She
some other
should.
lanes.
We went to law school together.
Did you?
I have a lot of respect for, and we were running at the same time. So, yeah, I have a lot of respect
She's
for
so
Ellie.
good.
We
yeah.
love Ellie.
We love
Yeah.
But Judge Saxe, have you thought about doing a specialty court within the justice?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that right now, I know I am on the same floor as Judge Wood, Nadia, who you just had on your show, who she just started the mental health court.
Great young lady.
Yes.
And I could say that because I have a son that's older than her.
Yeah. Yes, she's a very talented person. We're very, we worked together actually at the public defender's office for many, many years. So have a lot of respect for her and Judge Goodman, who are the sort of leaders on the mental health court. So I peripherally hear, how things are going, and I've covered one of her calendars before. So absolutely, I think specialty courts have an important role to play in trying to address some of the needs that, the goal, I think, for everyone, right, is to get people the stability and the help so that they don't commit future crimes. So any way that I can do that within my lane, I'm all for it.
There was something else I wanted to ask you, but it comes to mind. Do you have anything else, Ms.?
Do you have a CCW?
So I will say I am a gun owner.
My standard question to the female judges.
I am a gun owner. Beyond that, for privacy and security, I won't say anything else, but I am a gun owner, and I think that it's important to.
Since you've been on the bench, any threats?
No, not
How about
that.
as a PD?
I don't think that I had any. I was fortunate to, it's if you treat people with a little bit of humanity, it goes a long way. So I definitely live by that as a person and as a public defender. Not to say that people who got threats as public defenders, did something different, but I was fortunate to have people that I didn't necessarily have those kinds of issues with, but it's something that I take seriously. Certainly, I think that it's important that we are being trained in terms of what the security protocols are in our courthouse, and something that I had brought up in the first couple of years, and that has been since addressed, and training has been provided. So,
I think, but in addition to judicial college, that all judges should go through a concealed carry course and actually have weapons on them, And I really do think that.
Well, I will say, I'm not taking a position one way or the other, but I will say that we have a really great marshals.
Do you feel safe in the courthouse?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I do feel safe. Look, you could go into a grocery store and you can go anywhere potentially, and it could be an employee or somebody who already has access. It doesn't even there's a variety of ways that the worst could potentially happen. But as as a whole, I think there are the people that are the marshals in our courthouse are very competent, really caring people. They a lot of them, even, of course, I have my own marshal, but I'm friends with a lot of the other marshals. They know us. They know our kind of, mannerisms, I guess, or ways. And they're always looking out for us and for all of the employees that are in the courthouse. And so I feel safe in that respect. Absolutely.
Well, I like to be able to defend myself. But when I go to the courthouse, I got to rely on somebody defending me. And it's not my style. So when we were with Judge Schwartz's courtroom, and everybody had weapons, I was like, I feel left out because I didn't have my weapon.
Oh, man. Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
It works.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else for Judge Saxe?
No.
Judge Saxe, it was great having you.
Good. Well, I'm glad. I'm very grateful that you had me on. I know that there's lots and lots of people that are going to be wanting to get on this show that are running. And so appreciate you making the time and inviting me to be here.
So Mark is going to zoom in on you. And you have the final say. You can say whatever.
Any 30 to 40 minutes I get.
Stay out of trouble.
Talk away.
If you want to give a point of contact, you can, but usually they don't. But whatever you want.
Okay. All right. Well, again, thank you, Stephanie and Steve, for having me on the show. I'm really grateful to be here. And for anybody watching, again, I talked about transparency. If anyone wants to come and watch my court, Monday to Thursday, have court every morning. We usually go till noon. You can also watch via Zoom. So, anybody is welcome. And thank you again for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Ms.
Good to
Phillips.
see you.
Folks, that was Judge Rebecca Saxe, Las Vegas Justice of the Peace. We hope that this show has been informative and you get to know your judge. And I also want to give a shout out to one of our members out there, Frank Friends, who's one of our court observers. Frank, I haven't seen you out there court observing. We need to get with that because we got a lot of judges to go through. So I just want to let you know. And family court and the RJC as well. This is Steve Sanson, Stephanie Phillips. Until next time.